Here's 5 things to know about the Folklore era. The Folklore album was released on July 24th, 2020, and it was the first of her albums to be released within 24 hours of its announcement. The album was conceived during the COVID-19 pandemic and lockdown, after all of her Loverfest shows had been canceled and the sale of her masters was still fresh in her mind. She said, "Most of the things I had planned this summer didn't end up happening, but there is something I hadn't planned on that did happen, and that thing is my 8th studio album, Folklore." In discussing the album, she says, "One thing I did purposely on this album was put the Easter eggs in the lyrics, more than just the videos. I created character arcs and recurring themes that map out who is singing about who. For example, there's a collection of 3 songs I refer to as the Teenage Love Triangle. These 3 songs explore a love triangle from all these 3 people's perspectives at different times in their lives, aka Betty, August, and Cardigan." She stated that My Tears Ricochet was the first song written for the album, and this was the first album that she ever worked with Aaron Dessner. Here's 5 things to know about Taylor Swift's song, The One. This song was written and produced with Aaron Dessner. In the Long Pond studio sessions, Aaron Dessner said of the first line, "I'm doing good, I'm on some new shit." It was funny because I feel like you captured the spirit of the whole record with that song. With The One in the sense of just the way it opens, "I'm doing good, I'm on some new shit, been saying yes instead of no," and I was like, is she talking about writing songs with me and everything else at the same time, or something? While it is unclear who the song is officially about, there are a lot of references to her past discography as well as the other songs on the album. For example, Roaring Twenties Tossing Pennies in the Pool calls back to the 1920s, The Great Gatsby, which was an inspiration for the song This Is Why We Can't Have Nice Things. In verse 1, she says, "I thought I saw you at the bus stop, I didn't though," which is similar to Holy Grounds and "I see your face in every crowd." In the final chorus, she says, "Rose flowing with your chosen family," and in Peace on the album, she also says "family that I chose," referencing chosen family multiple times. Here's 5 things about Taylor Swift's Cardigan. This song was written and produced with Aaron Dessner. In the album prologue, Taylor states, "It started with imagery, visuals that popped into my mind and piqued my curiosities. Stars drawn around scars, a cardigan that still bears the scent of loss 20 years later." This is the first song of the Teenage Love Triangle on the album, and this is Betty's perspective 20 years later. In the bridge of this song, it says "to kiss in cars and downtown bars," and in Betty, it says "kissing in my cardigan," and Betty also mentions wearing a cardigan. Also, many people have pointed out that this song could also be a retrospective on her past work as well as her relationship with the fan, with verse 1, "Vintage tee, brand new phone, high heels on cobblestone, sequin smile, black lipstick, sensual politics," sort of making imagery of her past albums before Folklore. And in the song, she also says "Peter losing Wendy," which is a reference to Peter Pan, and she has a song "Peter" on Tortured Poets Department, which many people believe to be about Maddie Healy, which could also be an inspiration for Here's the 5 song. Things to know about Taylor Swift's The Last Great American Dynasty. The song was written and produced with Aaron Dessner. In Rolling Stone, Taylor Swift talked about the inspiration of the song. "Her name was Rebecca Harkness, and she lived in the house that I ended up buying in Rhode Island. That's how I learned about her, but she was a woman who was very, very talked about, and everything she did was scandalous. I found a connection in that." You see her talk about Rebecca's life in the verse 1 where she said Bill was the heir to the Standard Oil name and money, talking about her husband, William Bill Hill Harkness, and she references their home and eventually her home with the lyrics, "They picked out a home and called it Holiday House." In discussing the song with people, she said, "I'm really proud of She Had a Marvelous Time ruining everything from The Last Great American Dynasty, because it is about what happens when women step out of their cages and run. It can be a real pearl-clutching moment for society when a woman owns her desires and wildness." We see her switch narrative from Rebecca to herself with lyrics "free of women with madness, their men and bad habits, and then it was bought by me." And then she says, "I had a marvelous time ruining everything." Here's 5 things about Taylor Swift's Exile featuring Bon Iver. This song was written with William Bowery, aka Joe Alwyn, and Justin Vernon, and produced by Aaron Dessner and Joe Alwyn. This song follows the dual perspectives of 2 exes post-breakup, where one is talking about seeing no signs and the other is describing them, aka "you never gave a warning sign" and "I gave so many signs." In the chorus, they say, "I think I've seen this film before and I didn't like the ending," describing how they've seen how the relationship plays out and they didn't like how it ended in such a bad way or how it ended at all. She also uses film metaphors on other songs of the album, including The One, This Is Me Trying, and Hoax. In the chorus, they also say "you're not my homeland anymore." In other songs, she has referred to Joe Alwyn, her ex-boyfriend, as feeling like home, aka in Long Story Short, where she says "and he feels like home." In verse 2, she also sings "like you'd get your knuckles bloody for me," and she later references something similar in The Great War Off of Midnights, where she says "my knuckles were bruised like violets." This implies one who would fight for the relationship. Here's 5 things about Taylor Swift's My Tears Ricochet. This is a solo written track and was produced by Joe Alwyn and Aaron Dessner. Swift has described this song as being about an embittered tormentor showing up at the funeral of his fallen object of obsession, aka you can hear that by the funeral sonics at the beginning of the song. It was revealed that this was the first track written for the album, and it acts as a metaphor for her masters being sold without her consent. This is demonstrated in the chorus where she says, "Hear my stolen lullabies." In verse 1, she says that if I'm on fire, you'll be made of ashes too, talking about how he betrayed her and now she's going to go back through the process of re-recording all her work, which will end up hurting the monetary value of the stuff he sold. You can also see this referenced in Hoax where she says, "I am ash from your fire." And of course she says, "And I didn't have it in myself to go with Grace," talking about how she publicly denounced her selling of her masters to Scooter Braun, and the hero flying around saving face, talking about how they tried to save face and do PR after. Here's 5 things about Taylor Swift's Mirror Ball. This song was written and produced with Jack Antonoff. She stated that this song was written after all of her Loverfest shows had been canceled due to the pandemic, and you can see this illustrated when she says in the bridge, "And they called off the circus, burned the disco down." The song also describes her tendency to mirror what the public wants or wishes from her to be, aka in the lines, "I'll show you every version of yourself tonight." It also talks about how she's always performing and working behind the scenes no matter what's going on. And you can see this in the chorus where she says, "When no one is around, my dear, you'll find me on my tallest tiptoes, spinning in my highest hills, shining just for you." And in verse 2, she also says, "I'm a mirror ball, I can change everything about me to fit in," sort of illustrating how she constantly changes her image and her sound every era and every album she goes into, aka Eras Tour. Here's 5 things about Taylor Swift's 7. This song was written with and produced by Aaron Dessner. Aaron Dessner has described the song as looking back at childhood and those childhood feelings, recounting memories and memorializing them. Swift also said, "With 7, the song, I was looking back on it. I've always wondered when I was a kid throwing a massive tantrum in a grocery store, like, part of me is like, man, I feel you. Like, when did I stop doing that when I was upset?" We do have a reference to her childhood and her hometown with "But I was high in the sky with Pennsylvania under me." Obviously, she's very famously born in Reading, Pennsylvania. In the bridge, she says, "I think your house is haunted, your dad is always mad, and that must be why," giving an allusion to a child's observation of what an abusive or a very, toxic parent is like. Then she says, "Then you won't have to cry or hide in the closet." Many queer Swifties, me myself, have interpreted this as maybe their friend is queer and not out of the closet for fear of retribution from their parent. Here's 5 things about Taylor Swift's August. This song was written with Jack Antonoff and produced with Jack Antonoff and Joe Alwyn. This song is famously a part of the Teenage Love Triangle songs on this album, aka Cardigan, August, and Betty. And this one focuses on a fictional character Taylor has said she's named Augustine, and she is essentially the other woman in this perspective. You can see the other woman perspective played out in lyrics such as, "August slipped away like a bottle of wine because you were never mine, and because you weren't mine to lose, you weren't mine to lose." Also in Betty, she says, "Would you trust me if I told you it was just a summer thing?" And in August, in the bridge, she says, "So much for summer love and saying us, because you weren't mine to lose." Also in the bridge, she says, "And say meet me behind the mall." And in the Long Pond studio sessions, Taylor Swift said that the whole song started with the fact that I had written down in my phone, "Meet behind the mall" years ago, wanting to write it into a song. Here's 5 things about Taylor Swift's This Is Me Trying. This song was written with Jack Antonoff and produced with Jack Antonoff and Joe Alwyn. In the Long Pond studio sessions, Taylor Swift said, "I've been thinking about addiction, and I've been thinking about people who, if they're either suffering through mental illness, addiction, or they have an everyday struggle. No one pats them on the back every day, but every day they're actively fighting something. There are so many days that nobody gives them credit for that. So how often somebody who is going through that kind of struggle must want to say to everyone in the room, 'You have no idea how close I am to going back to a dark place.'" You can see the idea of addiction explored in lines such as, "So I got wasted like all of my potential," and "Pouring my heart out to a stranger, but I didn't pour the whiskey." You can also see that last line referenced in Dear Reader off of Midnight's Deluxe, "My 4th drink in my hand, these desperate prayers of a cursed man spilling out to you for free." In verse 1, she also says, "Could have fallen my fears all the way down," which could be a reference to a line in Hoax, "Stood on the cliffside screaming, give me a reason." Here's 5 things about Taylor Swift's illicit affairs. This song was written with Jack Antonoff and produced with Jack Antonoff and Joe Alwyn. This song explores the concept of a physical and emotional love affair. She explores this concept in later albums, including on Midnights and on Tortured Poets. You can see it explored in the lines, "Tell your friends you're out for a run, you'll be flushed when you return," kind of talking about how you've just slept with someone new and you're lying to your friends about it. You also see this in the lines, "Leave the perfume on the shelf that you picked out just for him so you leave no trace behind," talking about all the things that you would normally do in a relationship, how you have to hide them because this is a cheating love affair. She also says, "A drug that only worked the first few hundred times." This could also be a reference to the song Don't Blame Me, where she compares her love to a drug. She also says, "You showed me colors you know I can't see with anyone else." In her relationship at the time with Joe Alwyn, she often referred to him in the colors gold, but also in Question Off of Midnight, she says, "Because I don't remember who I was before you painted all my nights a color I've searched for." Here's 5 things to know about Taylor Swift's Invisible String. The song was written with and produced by Aaron Dessner. This song is all about how an invisible string of fate had tied her to her ex-boyfriend Joe. This song was originally performed as the opening to the Folklore set on the Eras tour, but was changed once the breakup was announced. However, she did perform it one more time in Nashville when the mayor dedicated a bench to the song in Centennial. The lyric in question was, "Green was the color of the grass where I used to read at Centennial Park." Verse 1, she also talks about teal was the color of your shirt when you were 16 at the yogurt shop, referring to a previous job of her ex, Joe Alwyn. In verse 2, she says, "Bad was the blood of the song in the cab on your first trip to LA," obviously making a reference to her song off of 1989, Bad Blood. In verse 3, she says, "Cold was the steel of my axe to grind for the boys who broke my heart. Now I send their babies presents." This is a reference to her ex, Joe Jonas, who she famously wrote Forever and Always about, and sending a present to her friend and Joe Jonas's former partner, Sophie Turner, when they had 5 things to know about Taylor Swift's Mad Woman. The song was written with and produced by Aaron Dessner. In discussing the song on the Long Pond studio sessions, Taylor Swift said, "I was thinking the most rage-provoking element of being a female is the gaslighting. There have been instances of this recently with someone who is very guilty of this in my life, and it's a person who tries to make me feel like I'm the offender by having any kind of defense. I feel like I have no right to respond, or I'm crazy, or I'm angry. How do I say why this feels so bad?" The person in question likely being Scooter Braun, who bought her masters. In verse 1, she says, "What did you think I'd say to that?" This is likely referred to the terrible deal offered by Scooter in the purchase of her masters. According to Taylor Swift, she said, "Scooter's team wanted me to sign an ironclad NDA stating I would never say another word about Scooter Braun unless it was positive," essentially silencing her before she even had a chance to bid on her own work. And of course, she says, "What a shame she went mad. No one likes a mad woman." This is pointing out the double standard between men and women, saying a man is allowed to react and a woman can only overreact. She also makes a call out to Scooter's ex-wife and multiple ones, specifically in the bridge where she says good wives always know. 5 things about Taylor Swift's Epiphany. It was written with and produced by Aaron Dessner. Taylor Swift wrote this song drawing inspiration from her grandfather who fought in World War II, saying, "He never talked about it, not with his sons, not with his wife. Nobody got to hear about what happened there, so I tried to imagine what would happen in order to make you never be able to speak about something. I realize that there are people right now taking a 20-minute break between shifts at a hospital who are having this trauma happen to them that they will probably never want to speak about. I just thought this is an opportunity to maybe tell those stories." In verse 1, she talks specifically about World War II, saying, "Keep your helmet, keep your life, son, just a flesh wound, here's your rifle." In the next verse, she's drawing parallels with the pandemic in 2020, where she said, "Something med school did not cover, someone's daughter, someone's mother holds your hand through plastic now." And she calls back to that mention of 20 minutes of rest when she says, "Only 20 minutes of sleep, but you dream of some epiphany," in the bridge and the outro. Here's 5 things about Taylor Swift's Betty. This song was written with Joe Alwyn and produced with Jack Antonoff and Aaron Dessner. This is the 3rd and final song in the teenage love triangle alongside Cardigan in August, and it follows the perspective of James, who cheated on Betty with Augustine. We see callbacks to Cardigan in the lyrics, "Standing in your cardigan, stooped at a street light, I was walking home on broken cobblestones." And we see callbacks to the cheating scandal of August in "What if I told you it was just a summer thing? James, get in, let's drive, slept next to her. But I dreamt of you all summer long." She also used the names of her friend Blake Lively's children, Betty, James, and Nez, as the names of the characters within this song. Here's 5 things about Taylor Swift's Peace. This song was written with and produced by Aaron Dessner. Taylor Swift told Rolling Stone, "Peace is actually more rooted in my personal life. It comes after carving out a human life within a public life, and how scary that can be when you do fall in love and you meet someone, especially if you met someone who has a very grounded, normal way of living. I oftentimes, in my anxieties, can control how I am as a person and how normal I act, and rationalize things, but I cannot control if there are 20 photographers outside in the bushes and what they do and if they follow our car and if they interrupt our lives." This was written when she was dating Joe Alwyn, who very famously had a much less desire to be in the spotlight than her. On debut in Cold As You, she said, "I know you wouldn't have told anybody if I died for you," but she changed her sentiments in the chorus of this song, saying, "But I would die for you in secret." In this song, she says, "I talk shit with my friends, it's like I'm wasting your honor." She makes mention of this in The Great War as well, when she said, "Looked at me with honor and truth." She also says, "But there's robbers to the east, clowns to the west," likely referring to Scooter Braun and Kanye West. Here's 5 things to know about Taylor Swift's Hoax. This song was written with and produced by Aaron Dessner. Taylor Swift has said that this song has multiple inspirations, and she said in Long Pond Studio sessions, "I think I said, what if not all of these feelings are about the same person? What if I'm writing about several different, very fractured situations, like one is about love, and one is about a business thing that really hurt, and one is about a sort of relationship that I considered family, but that really hurt. I definitely had the moment of doubt. I had the moment of like, I don't usually do this. I usually know exactly what I'm writing about, and I was really happy when you kind of pushed me forward like, nope, do the thing that makes you uncomfortable." In the chorus, she says, "Don't want no other shade of blue but you." This could refer to sadness, but she also refers to her ex Joe Alwyn in many songs on Lover using the color blue. In the bridge, she says, "You know I left a part of me back in New York." New York was a main motif of the 1989 era where she went through her ED and had the major Kanye West situation. In the outro, she says, "My kingdom come undone." It's mentioned castles crumbling in the song Castles Crumbling, Caught With. And this could also be a reference to a line in
Here's 5 things about Taylor Swift's The Lakes.
This song was written and produced with Jack Antonoff. Taylor Swift has said during the Long Pond studio sessions about the song, "I think the lake sort of sounds like a testament of what I've wanted to escape from and where I saw myself escaping. We'd gone to the Lake District in England a couple years ago. In the 19th century, you had a lot of poets like William Wordsworth and John Keats who would spend a lot of time there. There was a poet district. These artists moved there, were kind of heckled for it and made fun of for it as being these eccentrics and these kind of odd artists who decided that they just wanted to live there. I remember when we went, I thought, man, I could see this. You live in a cottage and you've got wisteria growing up the outside of it. Of course they escaped like that. Of course they would do that." She talks a lot about escaping the media, especially social media, with lines such as "these hunters with cell phones," and also saying, "I've come too far to watch some name-dropping sleaze tell me what are my words worth," which could also be a reference to Scooter Braun, but also as a play on words to reference William Wordsworth, the famous poet. In the bridge, she said, "A red rose grew up from ice frozen." Also mentions frozen ground in the song Hoax.